What is up, Watch fam? I am Christian from Theo and Harris, and it's Monday, so today is a collection review. Before we get into today's collection, which I stumbled upon via Instagram, I think. If you don't already, follow Theo and Harris on Instagram, because nobody else knows how to take a decent wrist shot, apparently. And do not forget that tomorrow, bright and early, 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we are listing 5 new incredible vintage watches. Tudor, Omega, maybe even a Rolex. So definitely stay tuned, check out what we've got coming, and check out the watches featured in the Metal tomorrow on this channel. Anyway, before we get into it, a quick wristwatch check. I am wearing a gorgeous solid gold day-date, reference 1803, with a beautiful Buckley dial. Roman dials are called Buckley dials, if you didn't know that. And these are extremely beautiful watches. I mean, I think they're definitely isolating, and in selling quite a few, I've realized that you either like them or you don't. I happen to be on the side of like, and kind of more so of a really like side of heavy love, you know. But plenty of people think that they're too kind of ostentatious, but I think that this lemon dial is just so freaking tasteful. So anyway, this watch was sourced by Theo and Harris, sourced by myself, but it is sold already. So if you are looking for a solid gold day-date or a Datejust or anything, please shoot me an email at info@theoandharris.com. It would be my pleasure to find virtually anything for you. But that's it. Let's get into today's collection review. Okay, the watch geek kind of in question today is Lorenzo. Cool name, Lorenzo, number one. First off, thank you so much for even shooting me an email. You've got a terrific collection. I cannot wait to share it with the audience. And that's it, man. Have a great day. So now let's go into this thing. The first watch that he showed me here was his Rolex Kermit. I believe it's the anniversary of the Submariner celebration. You know, to take at it from two different angles. You know, do I think that a green bezel, you know, celebrates the anniversary of a watch very well? No, I don't think so. But it doesn't matter, because in this particular instance, this watch is beautiful. I think it's definitely a watch worth owning. I think that it's a conversation piece, and it's a pretty watch. There's no question. I know that when my dad was looking to buy his first Rolex, he went up going with the GMT, but the Kermit was the other watch that really kind of struck him, and rightfully so. Lorenzo has his right now on a brown suede strap, and it's absolutely beautiful. Much more importantly than all of that, Lorenzo is gifted this watch for his 18th birthday. First of all, you, because that's an incredible 18th birthday gift. I got some good gifts growing up, but that is really good. And it was by his grandfather. You know, what more can you say? I mean, what a generous gift. You know, I don't want to dwell on it too much, but I think it's pretty self-explanatory how I feel about your position there, being so lucky to be kind of blessed with such a wonderful grandfather. And I think that it was probably your grandfather's, you know, like honor, right, to give you something so awesome. So to me, this watch is just like all around, the whole story about it, the watch itself, it's pretty much so perfect. Okay, next you have an Ed White Speedy from 65. I've made it very clear I am not a Speedmaster guy. Speedmasters don't do it for me. They, you know, for a lot of reasons, and I actually have a video about it. Anna, please put the link below. And guys, if Anna doesn't, comment the hell out of her, but you will, Anna. I'm not a big Speedy fan, but I can recognize them for their historic, you know, significance, for their, you know, quality of design and construction. Those are 3 objective elements here that I could never dispute. And if you are lucky enough to find an original example, which is extremely rare, in great condition, especially if it's a rare example, like this Ed White, you hit gold. I mean, this is an incredible watch. I would recommend this watch to anybody. Not only do I love the ghosted bezel, which to me, I mean, all bezels should be ghosted, but the kind of like chocolate-ish dial here you've got going. I mean, this watch is a dream watch for any Speedy lover. I'm not a Speedy lover, and I appreciate it immensely. So I can only imagine what an actual like Speedy addict, you know, would feel about this watch. So second watch on the list, very good. Next is a watch that I should hate. I mean, you know, but I actually like a whole lot. Lorenzo's girlfriend bought him a Dan Henry watch, and it's basically a ripoff. It's a total homage to a Breitling 765, I believe, the Jean-Claude Killy. I mean, this watch, the original versions are incredible. They're totally unaffordable, you know, within relative reason, but they are beautiful watches. Your version is the perfect mix. I don't mind the faux patina at all. I like the subdial. I think the watch all around is very, very pretty. I think that you could have had it a lot worse with it. I've heard stories of girlfriend watches or anything really gift watches, have been a disaster because, people that are giving typically don't understand the intricacies of the watch geek passion, so they end up giving some hunk of shit, and it's sad because you want to be sentimental about it, but it's awful. So this watch, on the other hand, is great. If your girlfriend, you should actually show your girlfriend this part of the video and tell her, great job, you picked a beautiful, aesthetically beautiful watch here, with actually, the watch itself doesn't have history, but where the watch has come from, inspiration does, and I think that she did a wonderful, wonderful job. So wear it with pride. Don't even consider selling it. There's no point. Moving on, another really important watch in your collection, a Hamilton Khaki. Fundamentally, it's a good watch. No doubt. I've recommended them before to people, and I'm sure I'll recommend them again. Okay, so you said you don't get a lot of wrist time with it, you don't wear it, but there are 2 reasons to me why you have to keep it, which you kind of also agree with in the email. One, it's not worth all that much, so if you sold it, you're not like making bank. And 2, it was your first mechanical watch, and you want to give it to your son, hypothetical son, one day, which I think is awesome. To be able to give your son your first watch, especially as a watch geek, something that matters so much to you, I think that's a beautiful moment. And you know what? Your son could start off with a lot worse watches than a Hamilton Khaki. Next, you have a Heuer Bund. This is just stupid good. These were made both by Heuer and Leonidas, which are kind of the same company. They were made for the Italian military. They're flyback chronographs. They're 42 or 43 millimeters. There's 2 things in my opinion. Not only are they very historically significant watches. These are military issued chronographs from one of the most famous brands ever, and they're Italian. So that's wonderful. These watches are 2 things. First, they are like I said, military issued chronographs by one of the most famous brands ever with flyback function. You have like a whole a ball of just thunder right there, But then second, taking the provenance aside, they're just beautiful watches at 42, 43 millimeters. You've got yourself a modern chronograph in size, which means a lot. Most of the reason people stay away from vintage is because of size. So you've got this, this hefty piece of really well-made, important historical watchmaking. You can't beat this thing. You really, really can't beat this. They're not cheap by any means, but we're definitely not gonna, we're not gonna recommend you liquidate this. But let's move on. Okay, next you have the Dodane Type 21. These were watches, Dodane was one of the brands, alongside many others, that were lucky enough to have contracts with the French military during the 50s and onward. This is a seriously beautiful watch, there's no doubt. Like you mentioned, this has a lot of redundancy with the Heuer Bund, which kind of does present a problem. There's no problem if there's unlimited money, but we'll get into the conversation about what you should do with them later. But wonderful watch, a beautiful case. I love everything about the dial. This is just a wonderful, wonderful piece. If anything, this appeals to my personal style more than the Bund, but we'll get back into it. Next, the Tudor Black Bay, a watch you bought as your first job, watch, first paycheck, I think even. Great watch. You wear it for vacations. There is no doubt that this is a great watch that will always serve you on vacations. It can take a beating, go in the water. Everything about it, rock solid. But there's no doubt that I believe what you wrote there. You were crazy about it when you bought it, but now you just still appreciate it, but it's not so, it doesn't evoke so much passion. But by looking by the rest of your collection, yeah, it's obvious. The Black Bay is not a watch that I'm going to say, oh, obviously, yes, that makes sense in his collection. As far as what his passion is, to me, I would think that you bought that kind of first time around, which is no problem. But we'll get into the money about this whole thing in a second. And then next is a watch that, is a vintage grail, the Enicar Sherpa. This is a 40 millimeter watch, powered by the Valjoux 72. Obviously, it's Swiss. It's a rare chronograph. It's a super desirable chronograph. It's a funny thing that dealers play on you. Oh, it's super rare, yes, but is it desirable? Does the rarity mean anything? Because when you say something is rare, there packs an implication that this is something that other people want and can't have. But if the ones that do exist are readily available, then it doesn't matter. This watch is both rare and desirable, no question. It demands $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, sometimes even $10,000 retail, or secondhand, vintage retail. And apparently Lorenzo picked it up on the cheap, bought it at like a flea market or something like that. So that's a hard conversation to have. But like I said, with money, we'll get into it in a second. And then finally, in 1975, Speedmaster 861 caliber, not a 321. Yes, I agree with your points here that it's not the same kind of speedy as your Ed White, but the large question is, okay, it's different, but is it still fundamentally redundant? and I'm going to answer that question in just a second. Okay, so before we get into my recommendations and what I think you should do with your money and your watches, let's first say you've got a wonderful collection. There is no question. You've got a very well-balanced collection. You've got a collection that is focused on, obviously, vintage chronographs. Your email shows to me your passion for that medium without question. You're kind of like poetically writing about the Valjoux 72 and finding this at a flea market and this one and that one and Ed White and it's the dream and yada, yada, yada. That to me, I immediately knew that you don't joke around. I mean, you may take this, hobby, with light heart, but still, it's clear that you're not confused. You have passion. Now, going on to what you say you want, a Rolex GMT, and I definitely see that fitting in your collection. Yes, they're expensive and they keep on rising. Not too long ago, you could have had a GMT 1675 for like $4,000. Those days are over, at least if you want a good one. But that does not mean that you still shouldn't buy one. So now what would you need to do? Assuming you don't have cash, I'm sure you do have cash, but assuming we're just gonna deal with the watches themselves and liquidate and move like that, and then fill in the little cash gaps at the end, here's what I would do. I think you can, without question, sell either the Tudor Black Bay, the Heuer Bund, or the Dodane, one of the two, and their Speedmaster 861. There is really, I have no hesitation in saying that. Why? Because I think that one, the Speedmaster is redundant. I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, you don't have enough watches, you don't have enough money. I'm talking about like mega money, where the watches you just keep collecting, without any sort of like, thought of what you have and oh, do I need to buy this? Keeping that in mind, there's no need for two Speedmasters. Yes, I get it. They are two different watches, and that is an explanation that I would accept from, someone buying 30, 40 watches. That makes sense. Oh yes, but they're different. You're right, and that's great. Or just a Speedmaster collector. I get that. But for you, in my opinion, they're unnecessary. I would definitely keep the Ed White, no question. So right there, alone, you just freed up like $3,000, give or take a couple bucks. So right there, alone, you just freed up $3,000, give or take a couple of bucks. Next, Tudor Black Bay. I know this sucks. You don't have to sell it. You might even keep it because I get the appeal, but the Tudor Black Bay does nothing that your Rolex sub doesn't, or quite frankly, your Dan Henry. These are watches that you can wear on vacation. These are watches that you can beat up. These are watches that are built. I mean, the Dan Henry not so much, but still to an extent. I mean, you're not going to freak out if you get a little nick. These are watches that are built to have a little fun with. These are not like safe queens like your Sherpa, and I bet that you wear your Sherpa, but it's still to the office. I get the difference between the office and vacation completely. I do dumb shit on vacation that I would never do back at work. I totally understand, but really that function is checked off. Whether you want to keep that now because it was your first watch that you bought, that's up to you. I mean, that's a tough call, but it's a lot of money being tied up. It's $2,000 plus. So that brings you from your 3,000 with your Speedy up to 5-ish. So now you're basically almost there with your GMT. I mean, so that's something you should seriously consider. And finally, your Heuer Bund or your Dodane. Tough call. Once again, they are redundant, not so much as the Speedies though. I would totally understand if you kept both. I get it. I think that both watches align with your passion very clearly. Like, it takes no leap of faith to understand that the Dodane and the Heuer fit with the Sherpa, fit with the Speedmaster. It all makes sense. So ultimately, it's very much so your call. If you had to sell one of them, I ask you, which one would you sell? I think it'd be your Dodane. To me, you spoke much more poetically about the Bund, so that's what I think you would do. But once again, no pressure to sell either. I mean, you're already at $5,000 plus on the watches I just told you to liquidate, and a great 1675 is really only like $2,000 to $3,000 more. Maybe even more than that. Of course, you can spend $9, $10, $11, $12, $13, $14, $15, $16, $17, $18, $19, $20,000 on a 1675. So it depends on what you want. But I can definitely see you snagging a really great example for around $7, $8,000. So that's really it, Lorenzo. I love your collection. I think it's very concise. I think it's very clear. There are redundancies that I recommend that you liquidate, especially in pursuance of a greater piece, a piece that does not exist in your collection, and in a true vintage, Rolex, with something you don't have. If you were to stay in the chronograph lane, which I'm sure you will down the road, I think that you'd be very wise to pick up maybe a Valjoux 72 from a different brand, maybe picking up something from Girard-Perregaux. They had some great stuff. I mean, some really amazing stuff. Even like a Jaeger Culture chronograph. I know they came in around 37, 38 millimeters, but if you'd be comfortable with that, I think it's a great call. But that's it, man. You've got a wonderful collection. I couldn't have been happier to review it for you. And that's it. Guys, if you want me to review your collections, shoot me an email at info@theoandharris.com. It would be my pleasure. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Theo and Harris. Have an awesome day, Watch Geeks.